Welcome again to Father Paul's Talk. Today I'm going to talk about a very difficult subject. I'm going to talk about pain. Pain is something that we all experience. But to begin with, to answer the question, what is pain? Well, pain is more than one thing. Pain that automatically comes to mind is physical pain. Physical pain caused by, for instance, illness or accident, something to do with our bodies. Maybe we fall over. Maybe there's something in our bodies that are causing us pain. Maybe we are recovering from surgery, physical pain. And then there are two other kinds of pain: mental pain and spiritual pain. And these are two very similar things, but they are quite different. But in the context of today, I'm just going to really talk about them as the same thing, as sort of spiritual and mental pain together, rather than talking about them separately. One of the great differences between physical pain and mental pain is often that physical pain can express itself through the body. In other words, through the face, the stress on the face. The body itself can show its wounds or bruising. Whereas mental and spiritual pain is on the inside. You can't see it. Just in the same way as we are told that bones can be bruised. In other words, you can bruise your bones, but that won't necessarily show itself on the flesh. And so mental pain and spiritual pain can be intense, and yet it doesn't see itself. It doesn't show itself in the way that physical pain does. And so often, for that reason, people don't recognize it. We live in a society at this time where people want to avoid pain at all costs. Pain is sort of seen in a very negative way. And I guess that leads to this question: is pain good or bad? Or can pain be both? Clearly, there are times when pain, physical pain, is absolutely not a good thing. When you have an accident, a car accident, or when you fall over, or when you break something, or you experience, as I say, the pain that's recovering. But is it always bad? And is mental and spiritual pain always a bad thing? I wanted to suggest to you today that pain is both good, if you like, and bad. And particularly to focus on what's good about it rather than what's bad about it. As I say, we live in this culture where we're almost afraid to experience pain. We're afraid to experience discomfort in any way. We're afraid to come out what we call these days our bubble, our comfort zone. But let's just think about this experience of pain as a positive thing rather than a negative thing. For example, if we think of people training, for instance, in the army, they go through great physical exercise and mental exercise, and a lot of that causes them a lot of pain. But it's pain to actually strengthen the mind and to strengthen the body. I remember many years ago watching a film about George Patton, the American commander in the Second World War, and during the Battle of the Bulge, where his soldiers have to turn from fighting one battle and march 100 miles to fight another battle in thick snow on empty stomachs. He's watching them go by, and he says to one of his commanding officers, he says, "This is where the training pays off. This is where the pain and the discipline pays off." Or again, think about this. Think about the pain that people can experience. Maybe you've experienced it in your mind and in your heart when you're facing a decision For instance, perhaps whether you should take a job or not, or the pain that you might experience, the anxiety that you feel as you prepare for a job interview. Is that a bad thing? Or is it something that actually strengthens you? Or think again, what about the pain of being a parent or a grandparent, where you have to allow the child, as it were, to make their own decisions sometimes, or do something that you know potentially may cause them grief? Sometimes the pain of allowing your child to make their mistakes in forming, for instance, relationships, or trying something out which you think is not going to work because of their temperament, and you have this pain, but it's a pain of love, and you just have to go with that. Or again, think of the things that athletes put themselves through, or even people that go to gym. You know, people would say something like, it's only through the pain of the muscles sometimes which enables the muscles in the body to actually expand and to grow and to be nourished. There's that phrase, you know, no pain, no gain. What is clear is that pain can be a terrible thing, but it can also be something that is neutral or something that is even good. There's things that we can learn from our experience of pain in this context that I'm talking about, really referring to mental and spiritual pain. In fact, the great mystics, the great spiritual writers, often talk about the way we understand more, we grow closer to God, we become stronger spiritually, not through those times of consolation, but those times of desolation. Or again, think of the people of Israel as they travelled through the wilderness, which was a time of pain and discomfort. They were out of their comfort zone, but through that, they became stronger. We live in this society that just wants to stay in a comfort zone. Anything that sort of troubles that in any way, anything that might just push or pull us out of that comfort is something that we recoil at, rather than something that we embrace with. You know, to become stronger in our bodies and our minds, we have to stretch out that bit further so as to expand our minds, our spirits, and our bodies. Otherwise, they deteriorate. It's as though in our society and in the church, this obsession with comfort and avoiding anything that's going to cause discomfort leads to a complete absence of language concerning, for instance, sacrifice. This way in which we see ourselves in this comfort zone is so evident. Is this failure to see that pain, mental and spiritual pain, can be the pain, and even physical pain for that moment, is that which gives birth. I mean, have you ever known, have you ever heard, really, of how many people have you heard, women, of giving birth without any pain whatsoever? And what about the anxieties and the thoughts that lead up to the birth? How can you have birth without some kind of pain, physical and mental and spiritual? Or again, we talk about growing pains as children grow up. Growing pains is a physical experience in the body, but its growing pains is also there, which you can't see so clearly, in the mind, in the struggle through adolescence, for instance, and in the spiritual life. Without this experience of pain, we cannot progress, we cannot develop. In fact, it's this experience of pain, mental and spiritual particularly, that distinguishes us from the other animals. This inability or this unwillingness to see pain often as something that is necessary and sometimes even good leads to some distorted ways of seeing our own Christian life and the life of Jesus. It leads to what I call the Lenten Jesus. The Lenten Jesus. We read the scriptures. We speak the words of the scriptures. We hear about how Jesus talks about taking up our cross and following him. We look at Jesus, the Lenten Jesus on the cross, and see his pain and suffering, and we feel sorry. And we feel a sense of gratitude. But it's all Jesus' pain. It's almost like the pain of the scriptures, the pain of Jesus is something that Jesus embodies in himself completely. His pain is not our pain. It's just his pain. And more so, this Lenten Jesus we look to as someone to take away our pain. And yet there is another Jesus. The Jesus, who we could say as the Jesus of Paul, St. Paul. St. Paul talks about a very different kind of Jesus. Paul talks about the way in which we are and encourages us to share in the suffering of Jesus, to stand alongside Jesus. He says in one of his letters, all I long for is to know Christ in his sufferings, so as to know the resurrection. Another place, he talks about the way in which we should boast of our troubles, our sufferings, so as that brings endurance, and endurance brings approval from God. For Paul, the suffering, the pain is something, not that we should run after, but it's something that we have to embrace. And the pain that I'm talking about is this mental and spiritual pain, which is involved in following the way of Jesus. The Paul of Jesus is very close to the Paul you see in the Jesus you see in the Bible, when Jesus says, "Take up your cross and follow me." When he says to the people, "The birds of the air have nests to lay and rest. The foxes have holes to go in. But the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head." And he says this in response to someone who says to him, "I will follow you." In other words, Jesus is saying, to follow me, it's not going to be a comfortable thing all the time. You're going to have to come out of your comfort zone. There's going to be pain. But that's part of what it is to live, to be alive, to go the way of the cross. Jesus says to the disciples, "Can you drink from this chalice?" We cannot live the Christian life avoiding pain. And sometimes we just need to embrace it and accept it. Pain is something, as I say, that often brings birth and brings growth. It's at the heart of the gospel in that way. We can even talk about the pain of love. Love is so often caught up in that experience of pain within our hearts and within our minds. We cannot allow our lives as Christians today in the church to be determined by the seeking comfort orientation of society. When Nehemiah went to build the walls of Jerusalem that were in ruin, the first thing he did was to kneel down and to weep in anguish at what he saw as the ruins. Now that moment of lamentation and anguish was painful, as it was in the words of Jeremiah and Hosea and the other prophets, in the words of Jesus. When Jesus in the Gospel says, "If only you would have listened, I would have been like a hen that gathered its chicks together with me." That moment that Jesus says something like that is a moment of anguish, a moment of pain, but it's a pain of love. It's a moment of pain and love that can only take place when Jesus, as it were, steps out of his comfort zone and says, "Follow me." And as Peter says, Jesus says to Peter and to the other disciples, "Are you going to leave me as well?" And Peter replies on behalf of the disciples, "No, you are the one who has the words of eternal life." So may God bless you. May God travel with you this day. May God, through his Spirit, give you the grace and the vision to step out of your comfort zone. And when you are faced with incredible pain, particularly that in your mind and in your spirit, the first thing to try to do is to be thankful for some of the things that God has given you, and ask God's grace that you may endure for the sake of his love. Amen.